Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. When I was 7, 8 years old, a lot of times I was put on a stool in front of the stove and told to stir a pot. And the reason for that is it was canning season. And my grandmother and my mother canned everything. And I learned at a very young age how to can and how to go about doing it. So you could say that canning and preserving food is sort of in my DNA. And when I started this channel, I did a lot of basic canning videos. I still do canning videos from time to time. But I've been getting a lot of comments recently in the last month or so here where people are sort of apprehensive about canning. You know, it's too overwhelming. We don't know how to start and those kind of comments. So I wanted to do just a basic canning video and explain some of the principles of it, show some of the basic stuff that you need. It isn't that expensive to start hot water bath canning. Now, I'm going to talk about hot water bath canning because it is the stepping stone to other more advanced forms of canning. I'm not going to get into pressure canning. Pressure canning is its own thing unto itself, but basic hot water bath canning revolves around stuff that's canned with sugar or stuff that's canned with vinegar and high acid foods. So if you're doing jams and jellies or you're doing pickles like bread and butter pickles, those particular methods of canning, all you need is a hot water bath canner. And a hot water bath canner can really be anything. And I got my favorite one here, and it's basically a garage sale find. And it's a big old stock pot with a lid that you have some type of grate or rack that you sit in the bottom so the cans don't make direct contact with the bottom of the pot, because if they do, they will break. So you have to have some type of rack or something in there to keep the jars up off of that while you're canning. And well, they make specific canners for hot water bath canning. Like I said, a stock pot with a rack in it will accomplish the same thing. The next thing is you're going to need some type of book. Now, there was always canning books. This is one of mine that belonged to my mother. This is the Kerr canning book. There's the Ball canning books. But a lot of stuff nowadays is available online. You can look up a bunch of different canning techniques right online. You don't even need a book. Then if you find one you like, you can just write that recipe down, and then you got it for forever, basically. And the thing about canning is you don't necessarily have to grow the stuff to can it. If you find a deal on something, or if you got a neighbor that's got a fruit tree, or you find a bargain on a bushel of tomatoes somewhere, or you got a neighbor that's more tomatoes than they know what to do with, you can can that stuff. It doesn't always have to be stuff that you grew yourself. A lot of the stuff that we canned growing up, it was maybe 50-50. 50% of the stuff was stuff that we grew ourselves, and the other 50% is stuff that we either got given to us, asked for it, traded stuff for it, and that kind of stuff. The next thing is your jars. And jars are mason jars. The mason jars can take the heat, basically, and there's kind of two different styles. There's regular mouth and there's wide mouth. And the regular mouth is sort of your old standby. These are the ones that have been around forever and ever, but they're narrower at the top, which makes them more difficult to get certain things out of, where the wide mouth is basically the same all the way up. So this is easier to get stuff in and get stuff out. Most people nowadays prefer the wide mouth, or certain things that I would rather can in wide mouth jars, just because it's easier to get the stuff in and out. And there's different kinds of lids that you use for canning. The disposable ones, like these right here, these are just your regular Ball, wide mouth and regular mouth canning lids. There are reusable ones that are out there. The old timers more or less just always use the disposable ones, and they would always stock these up. Back in 2020, when there was a huge run on canning stuff, these guys sold out. The old timers would always have a couple years worth of canning lids in advance at their house. I'm no different. I try to keep plenty of canning lids here because you just never know what's going to happen. These are relatively, even now, they're relatively inexpensive to get And we sort of know once what we can and what we put up every season, so we know about how many of these we use. And I just have extras because these more or less keep forever. Now, getting into the pickles and stuff like pickles and jams, there's two things that you have to add in any of those that basically help them become shelf stable. One is sugar. White sugar, for the most part, is what is used in canning and jam and jelly making. And then in pickle making, you're going to need vinegar and then, of course, your spices. Sugar and high acid foods are antimicrobial. So if you have something with a lot of sugar in it and you have something with a lot of vinegar in it, or a higher acidity, like nowadays when people can tomatoes, they'll add in like lemon juice into it to increase that acidity. The higher that acidity is, the less of a chance that you're going to have some type of foodborne baddie growing in there. And then the other thing is salt. Salt is very important when it comes to canning certain things as well. And it has to be canning salt or kosher salt. And the reason for that is there's nothing added into it. It's pure salt, nothing added into it. Sometimes you get pure salt, they put anti-caking agents in it. You get iodized salt. All that stuff can affect your overall product. Like if you use an iodized salt, it will turn your product brown and basically unsightly. So you want to have either a kosher salt or a canning salt. Again, this is like the canning lids. You want to have a few boxes of this put up. This isn't that expensive and it keeps. It's the same thing with the sugar and with the vinegar. I would say starting out, you should have at least, if you're going to do some canning, you should at least have probably 25 pounds of sugar, 5 gallons of vinegar, and you should have probably at least 3 boxes of kosher salt. So that is sort of the basics of the materials that you need to keep on hand for canning. There's also a few things that are universal to canning. One is when you fill your jars up with whatever it is that you're canning, whether it's jams or jellies, these tops always have to be wiped with a moist piece of paper towel so you get a good seal. Now, I've been told nowadays that you don't have to boil these lids before you put them on your jars before you can them. Mom and Grandma would always take these, drop these in some water and turn it up so they would simmer and start to boil, and that sterilizes these, but it also softens the compound that helps a good seal on your jars. The lids are pretty much disposable once I open them up, and if they get bent or dinged, you throw them out. But the rims can be used multiple times. When they start to get rusty and funky, then I throw them out. But other than that, I keep them. Another thing that is very handy to have is some type of tongs to reach down in, because a lot of the stuff that you can is going to be sort of hot water canned. A lot of the stuff when you can them will be hot when you put them in the jars. So these things get hot. So you're going to, if you have a set of nice tongs where you can grab onto those jars, lower them down into your pots, and then of course taking them back out. Another pro tip is if you have hard water, if you're using well water or whatever, you put a couple tablespoons of vinegar in the water when you're canning. And what that does is that doesn't get any type of mineral film or any scale on your jars, which also does happen. So those are the basics. You want to have some jars, you want to have some lids, you want to have some sugar, salt, and vinegar, you want to have a good stock pot with a rack in the bottom of it, and you want to have either a good canning book or you want to have some good canning recipes off of the internet put up. And that way you have a basic start in all what you need to start hot water bath canning, which is going to be your pickles, it's going to be your jams and your jellies, your high acidic foods. You know, if you want to make some tomato juice or you want to can some tomatoes or salsa, that kind of stuff. Those are the things that you can hot water bath can safely and simply. But anyway, I hope you guys got a little information, a little entertainment out of this video here. Just covering some of the basics of canning so it's not so overwhelming for some if they want to start canning for themselves and putting up their own food, because food preservation and putting up food is sort of the gateway to preparedness. Anyways, Modern Refugee, appreciate all my subscribers out there. Hope you guys got a little information, a little entertainment out of this video, and you guys have a good one.